Underway. All right, welcome. And thank you for attending the State Office of Funeral Home and Mortuary Science Services stakeholder meeting via webinar today. The date is Thursday, October 17th, 2024, and it is 1:03 p.m. Before we get started, we'd like to introduce the staff members from the Division of Professions and Occupations that are present. My name is Nate Brown. I'm a regulatory analyst with the division. Also attending are Sam Delp, the Division Director, Jackie Archelin, Deputy Division Director, Sarah Werner, Deputy Division Director, Zen Mayhew, the Program Director, Joseph Berry, Inspector for the division, and Maria Rascon Marana, a Regulatory Coordinator. The division has transitioned to a platform that is 100% virtual, and we appreciate your flexibility. As many of you have been to DORA stakeholder meetings before, we would like to reiterate the importance of your comments today. DORA makes decisions every day that may affect your life and your business, so your input is vital to the rulemaking process. Throughout this process, our goal is to create regulations that clarify and explain legislation, ensure minimum competency to enter and continue practice, and provide only what is absolutely necessary for consumer protection without creating unnecessary barriers to the marketplace. Your input will be part of the information that goes to the director as he considers adopting revisions to the rules. More specifically, today the director is proposing revisions to the rules to implement the provisions of House Bill 24-1335 concerning the continuation of the regulation of persons related to the final disposition of deceased human bodies, and Senate Bill 24-173 concerning the regulation of persons providing mortuary science services. Specifically, we are proposing revisions to existing rules 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, revisions to and renumbering of rules 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, and 1.9, and proposed new rules as follows. And there are quite a bit of these, so please bear with me. Rule 1.5, licensure of funeral home directors. 1.6, licensure of mortuary science practitioners. 1.7, licensure of embalmers. 1.8, licensure of cremationists and natural reductionists. 1.9, requirements for provisional licensure. 1.10, licensure by endorsement. 1.11, renewal by reinstatement. 1.12, continuing professional development. 1.13, workplace learning requirements for full licensure. 1.14, workplace learning requirements for provisional licensure. 1.15, credit for military experience. 1.16, disqualifying criminal convictions. 1.17, reporting criminal convictions. 1.18, application for registration. 1.19, registration renewal and reinstatement. 1.20, investigations and inspections. 1.21, declaratory orders. 1.22, custody and responsibility. 1.23, standards applicable to preparation rooms. 1.24, rules respecting cryonic preservation. 1.25, rules respecting delegation by funeral directors and mortuary science practitioners. Rule 1.26, rules respecting satellite offices. And 1.27, powers and duties of the director. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the program's website by the close of business on October 18th, 2024. As this stakeholder meeting is held solely by webinar, please raise your hand by using the hand icon if you would like to speak, and we will unmute your line so you will be heard by everyone. Or you can type your comment in the question section and we will read it aloud. Before we start taking comments, I want to ask that anyone providing comments, please state your name and the name of the organization that you represent, if any. Feel free to provide either general comments on the rule changes or specific comments on the proposed language. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen for you to be able to keep track of your time. And try not to repeat something that has already been said. Stating you are in full agreement with someone else works just fine and will be noted. Some ground rules and housekeeping matters. Just before we begin, if you're using your audio through your computer, please remember to put any phones on vibrate to turn them off. And whether you are using the computer or phone audio, please try to keep background noises to a minimum when speaking. And I did just want to also sort of set the stage for folks here as we begin this process. Just to sort of reiterate where we are in this process in terms of rulemaking. So any changes that you see here are in response to a change that was made by the state legislature. So really, our goal here is to gather comments from the public with respect to the changes here that you see, and not necessarily with the underlying policy decisions, which again were made by the legislature. But with that, again, this is your time to come and give us your thoughts on these proposed rules. So we will go ahead and move into the testimony portion of this meeting today. And again, you can either raise your hand or type your questions or comments into the Q&A as you see fit. There's also an opportunity, and I'll give you the information here at the end, but there is also, of course, an ongoing opportunity for anybody to submit written comments. We have an inbox here that is specifically for written comments for rulemaking. So if you don't feel comfortable speaking here or having your question read out loud here, you can certainly have your voice heard that way as well. But I see a hand up, and before I call on anybody, I will just issue a blanket apology for messing up anybody. But the first hand I see is Brenna McLaughlin. You should be able to unmute on your end. Please go ahead, and you'll have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear.
Hi there. My name is Emily Nelson. I'm with Beatree Cremation. I'm actually sitting here with Brenna McLaughlin as well as Cherie Brownie, all at Beatree Cremation. I think just one general comment that we have before any specific questions is surrounding the preparation of unembalmed human remains. We are a facility that does not offer embalming by design. We offer very natural preparation, but we still do viewings. So a concern that I have is the limitations that will create, though, handling deceased human remains is generally very safe with basic bloodborne pathogen training. So those limitations regarding who can prepare decedents for viewings, and particularly when there's no embalming involved, are very concerning to us as well as the community death workers who specialize in home funerals or may offer death doula services.
If you still have other comments, okay. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
I will go ahead and lower your hand. But if you do have another comment, please feel free. Although we do have quite a few folks on the call, so might be a little bit before we can get back to anybody who has previously spoken, but I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. Let me check the Q&A. Don't see anything there as of yet. And I did just want to take a moment. You'll see that Maria is sharing her screen and going through. And as we get comments here, you'll see that the comments we've already received have been put in there on the side, and any comments we get here today will also be incorporated into this public document as well, just so everybody can see what the conversation has been and what other people are saying. I see Jason Hopper. You should be able to unmute on your end. Please go ahead when you're ready. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I wanted to follow up just a couple of general questions based on what we had already sent over to you. Jason Hopper on behalf of SCI. One, I think the previous speaker hit on something that we were trying to understand where the department was going based on the definition of funeral establishment. Is it the intention of the department to have that every funeral establishment have a preparatory room, because not all do, yet the rules seem to indicate that everyone would have to have that room and have certain sanitary conditions, as sterilized versus sanitary as well. And then the other question I had goes up to the very beginning of the rulemaking, which is the designee language. Is it the department's intention to have someone designated by the director who doesn't work for DORA and is a third-party contractor?
Ultimately, I'm not really in a position to be able to answer many questions today. We're really just here to gather your thoughts. And if you do have questions, certainly those will be posed to the division director along with any comments as well. But I'm just personally not in a position to be able to answer that kind of question here live, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's what I have for now.
Great, thank you so much. Let me scroll to see if there are any other hands raised. Not at the moment. We got a written question from Martha Thayer. Will there be another draft of the rules before the November 7th meeting? In all likelihood, yes. We'll take your comments, incorporate them as the director sees fit, and we'll most likely have another draft available for public to look at as we get closer to that hearing in November. All right, I have a hand raised from Jimmy Brown. You should be able to unmute on your end. Please go ahead. When you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Jimmy Brown. I own the Brown Funeral Homes in Kiowa, Cheyenne, Lincoln, and Kit Carson counties. And the question I have at this time is regarding to standards applicable to preparation rooms. What is the feeling, or how's it going to be handled on some of these old buildings that have been functioning funeral homes for decades, some of them 30, 40, 50, 60 years, that there's one particular question I have is as it pertains to floor drains. Some of these old buildings, quite honestly, they don't have the capability of getting floor drains because of the way that sewer systems are in these facilities. Has there been any consideration given to how you're going to handle grandfathering in some of these old buildings, much the way that you are doing your provisional licensure with old funeral directors that have never been to mortuary school and never taken a national board exam and have never been licensed? Is there any thought as to how you're going to deal with some of these old buildings?
Well, again, sir, I won't speak for the division director in terms of what he's considering, but certainly will have that question presented to him as he considers these rules.
I would anticipate that that's going to be an issue, and particularly in some of our rural, smaller communities, low volume places, to where a $30 or $40 or $50,000 renovation in a prep room makes it literally cost prohibitive. In an environment where we're 80% cremation, I'm concerned that this may be a factor that's going to need to be addressed as you move forward with some of these older facilities. And then another comment that I had was, are some of these places going to be treated as branch facilities? I believe that I understand some of that will be the case, which would go back to the previous person's comment as to whether every location will be required to have a preparation room. As I understand the rule, that is not going to be the case, because branch facilities, and as I'm currently licensed in other states as well, and I know in those other states, branch facilities don't carry the same conditions and requirements as main facilities. And I didn't know if that was going to be specifically addressed in any of this rulemaking process or not.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your comments. And like I said, all of these questions and comments will go to the director as he makes his decisions on these matters.
And Jimmy, just to jump in real quick and to help a little bit with your question and Jason's question previously, yes, we are considering all of those things and the comments that Jason had previously mentioned. It's one of the reasons why we want to do this, right? We want to hear all of the things that you all are seeing in this initial draft to determine, where some of the concerns lie. And then obviously, as we go through additional draft iterations and incorporate some of the comments and think about some of the things that you all are bringing up, you'll see some more of those conversations and things flush out as we continue through the stakeholder process. But the short answer to your question and to Jason's question is yes, we're looking at all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Brown, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on mute. But do please raise your hand again if you have another comment or question. I'm going to go to some written questions first. Let's see, Brenna McLaughlin, question section 1.23C1 indicates the requirement for unembalmed remains to be wrapped in a sheet or cloth. Can a body bag also be included on this list? Christina Page, what has been put into place for crematories double checking identification and also for them to report back to the state that the proper cremation has been completed? Brenna McLaughlin again, for funeral homes that do not offer embalming, will we still be required to have the necessary instruments and apparatus for the embalming process? And again, Brenna McLaughlin, are the log requirements still applicable during periods of the absence of human remains in refrigeration, during which time the unit is shut off? See, Mark Ratliff has a question about refrigeration. Rule 1.23C3, measuring twice a day during each business day. Does this mean posted office hours? Shelia Canfield Jones wrote, other rural areas in other states have preparation rooms and are able to meet the requirements. With these laws, don't the rural areas have until 2027 to meet the requirements? As a consumer, I would want all funeral crematories to meet the same requirements. An anonymous attendee wrote, what liability is associated with signing off on folks for provisional licensing, especially since DORA wants those of us with a CMSP to sign off on folks at other facilities we don't work with? Martha Thayer wrote, can you clarify the path for full licensure for an MSP so those people can act as a QPR? QPR, I assume, is qualified peer reviewer. Anonymous attendee, will the business owner need to be licensed, or is it sufficient that those who are employed are the licensees? Let's see. Before I keep reading aloud, just to give you a break from my voice, let's go to someone on the line. Seth Vidal, your hand is up. Please unmute on your end if you're able. You go ahead and we'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think that I'll need 3 minutes. My name is Seth Vidal. I'm with the Natural Funeral in Lafayette, Colorado. I'd like to offer support for Ms. Nelson's comments regarding protection for folks in the home funeral movement, and that consideration with regard to people's cultural, spiritual, and religious preferences not be infringed upon due to families and doulas performing some of the preliminary ritual and ceremony following the death of a person in their care. And I would like to offer support for Brenna McLaughlin's comments regarding section 123B3D Roman numeral 7, where embalming apparatuses are required as a part of the definition of a preparatory room. I also operate 3 funeral facilities in Colorado, and we do not offer embalming with regard to any of our services. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that comment. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised at the moment, so we'll go back to the written comments. We got one from Blanca Eberhardt. How will title protection be implemented moving forward so that those who do not qualify to use and do will no longer use the term entitle? Suzanne Elliott. My father was a victim of the Penrose incident. My main interest involves frequencies of inspections of all facilities. Will frequency be increased in any proposed changes? We got a comment from Zayad. It should be proper drainage and not floor drainage. We have, as many other funeral homes do, have embalming stations where all are drainer and proper, not just on the floor. Another comment from Blanca Eberhardt. How will supervision be defined as general, generic? Who is accountable? The licensee. Tobias Urig. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing anybody's name. He said, as an alternative to required floor drain, especially in the context of facilities that do not perform high volumes of embalmings, a hazard spill mitigation plan would likely suffice. Suzanne Mackey, as the president of the board of the Funeral Consumer Society of Colorado and as a home funeral advocate and death doula, I align with Emily of Beatrice's concerns about rules and regs intruding on the current rights of families to care for their own dead. Of course, the unnecessary burden of those who provide natural funeral care. Anonymous attendee asked, why can't the temp of the cooler be colder than 44 degrees? Morgan Carroll. It is important that the owners also be licensed so they have a stake in the implementation, accountability for enforcement. Another question from Blanca Eberhardt. How will natural funeral homes and death doulas still comply and be included with oversight with death care in Colorado? And then Brenna McLaughlin, this section that states a licensed funeral director may not delegate tasks as provided in section 12-135-604-4D. Can you help us find this section in which these exclusions are outlined? And an anonymous attendee also said, state failed with the EDR system. Will they repair this so firms cannot just assign a crematory to their permit without that firm knowing it? And I just wanted to assure everybody that all of these written questions will be entered into the record the same way as all the spoken comments as well. I don't see any additional hands raised. I have answered all of the written questions so far. Looks like we just got another one. An anonymous attendee, who will pay for CMSPs to sign off on folks since they had to pay for their education? And also an anonymous question. I'm coming out of Oklahoma and they have one of the toughest regulations, and the owners of the funeral homes don't have to be licensed if they're not working in the location. Janelle Leonard wrote, nitrile gloves should be added to heavy duty latex. All right, I don't see any additional hands raised at the moment. That is at least currently, the last question that we have. Oh, we just got another anonymous attendee. Some individuals can't use latex. All right. We've exhausted all of those. So let's see. I see Jimmy Brown, your hand is raised again. Should be able to unmute. Please go ahead, and I'll give you another 3 minutes.
Thank you. One concern that I had, and I don't know if it's addressed, I don't think that it is in any of this, is I know I'm familiar with other states as well in which ownership must be advertised. In other words, if you purchase a business from an existing firm, the name doesn't have to change, but the public has to be made aware of the ownership as to who owns it, and therefore allowing the public to know that it may not be owned by the people that whose name is on the front of the building. I know in Oklahoma, I believe it's that way. In Kansas, it's that way. I think there's some other states that are that way as well. And I don't know if any consideration has been given to that as well, because I think from what I hear from the public is that many times they don't know who they're dealing with. And I'm a little suspicious that that may have led to some of our problems in the past that has caused some of this controversy. And I think the public has a right to know who it is that they're doing business with. I didn't know if Dora had given any consideration to how they might handle that, if they would handle that at all.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much for that additional question. Now I'll go ahead and lower your hand back down, and just, of course, always put it back up if you have other comments or questions. But looks like we got another couple of written comments. Anonymous attendee wrote, Rule 1.23C1 remains to be held longer than 24 hours must be embalmed or continuously refrigerated until final disposition. Does this mean we cannot remove from refrigeration for ID viewing and dressing, etc.? Morgan Carroll wrote, I really liked disclosure of ownership / change of ownership with input. Anonymous attendee says, will managers or folks who run these funeral homes be required some kind of licensing, being they don't always listen to their professionals who did go to school and have years of experience when something should be addressed? Anonymous attendee looks like he's replying to something that Sam may have said, but correct, Oklahoma is that way, but that is up to the new owner, how they want to proceed with letting the community know. And Danielle McCarthy, I agree with Jimmy Brown's statement of ensuring and announcing business owner changes so consumers know who they are dealing with. And thank you all so much for your comments. I don't see any hands raised at the moment. But I did just want to take a second to thank all of you for taking the time to come here and have your voices heard in this process. I know it's busy lives that you have to deal with other things, and it takes a special commitment to come here and be involved in the civic process. So I just really wanted to thank all of you for taking the time and having your voices heard in this process. I see Danielle McCarthy. Your hand is raised. You should be able to unmute. Please go ahead when you're ready. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Danielle McCarthy, Mrs. David Allen McCarthy Jr. I am a victim of the Sunset Mesa atrocity and also a Gold Star spouse. I understand that, as a Colorado native born, we're a large state, and our populations, our heavy populated centers are pretty much along the Front Range. Having lived on the Western Slope and knowing the toughness that it is in the rural areas, I know we're doing our best to kind of do a grand general blanket. I'm frustrated a little bit today with we've talked about tons of floor drains, and we've talked about that a little bit more, and maybe it's my misunderstanding of what this was today, and so I will own that. I understand what we're trying to do. Is there opportunity, not just in the next couple of times coming through this, to the November 7th time, but then revisiting this just so I have a better understanding of what's going on? Because we can't meet everybody's individual questions for each and every specific owner. And I get that. And this is the broad, like the law is the broad stroke. This is kind of the finer details. How do we accomplish, and I'm a business owner as well, not in the funeral industry, but in the different industry that is licensed in the state of Colorado and actually has to be, and has some huge regulations around it. How do we keep incorporating and ensuring that this is meeting these standards going forward, as well as maintaining equal opportunity and equity for everyone involved as business owners? And with obviously, and I'm completely biased on this, consumer protection, considering I'm, there are several on here who have experienced the worst that the funeral industry has to offer in Colorado currently. We're getting better at it, which is great, but my concern is how do we stay relevant, protective of consumer rights, ensuring that business owners are recognized for the amazing stuff that they're doing, and in filling some of these other little details that obviously we're not going to be able to fit this glove to every single person, every single entity. We're trying to do our best, but can I get a better understanding of this? If somebody can just take 5 minutes to explain this, please.
Sam, would you like to address that?
Yeah. Let me take a stab at it. Sorry, Nate.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So the thing to keep in mind is we're really at the beginning of this process. So to answer the first part of your question, will we be able to come back and address some of the issues and specifically the questions and the issues that folks are bringing up, both from the consumer side and from the business side? The answer is yes, right? This isn't the only meeting we're going to have around the topic. There'll be several others. The goal here is to take the questions and the concerns that folks are raising, look at them compared to what the initial draft looks like, make some of the revisions, put it out for additional comments, and we will go through a few different iterations of that process. You're correct in that, there's not going to be a situation where everyone that comes to the meetings is going to be happy with the result, but it is a process that we intend to go through to get to a place where the industry is properly regulated, consumers are properly protected. That is the goal. To the point of making sure that everyone's voice is heard and that everyone has an equal opportunity. That's one of the reasons why we have these specific stakeholder meetings and that we don't have individual offshoot meetings, right? It's one of the reasons why we want to bring everyone together for comments and for discussion so that we can ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in the process. I know that it only answers part of your question, but there will be additional opportunity for additional comment and additional review as we go through and refine the drafts on the rules.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer her questions there.
The only other thing I will add is, because there have been a few comments that have sort of bled over into the statutory requirements, there's the important thing for everyone to know, and I believe that most people that are coming into the meetings understand this, is the statute that the legislature has passed, the bills that were passed in the legislature, they create the framework around these rules. The rules are really intended to help further define and clarify the things that are in statute, but we cannot permit things in the rules or require things in the rules that aren't specifically authorized in the statute. So where there are limitations in the statute, or where the statute is specific about what's allowed and what's not allowed, or what a definition says and what it might not say, or what's required and what's not required, the rules cannot provide guidance that is not congruent with what the statute says. So that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. That's good, really good context to keep in mind. Let's go to some questions. I see, well, it's the name on here is Zayad's iPhone, but Zayad, please go ahead.
Hi.
You'll have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. Are you able to hear me by any chance?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, for the ladies out that are here, my condolences to you guys, and I'm so sorry you guys had to go through what you guys had to go through. And I was a former paramedic, I was a firefighter, I was a cop, I was a coroner before I went into the funeral industry. My heart goes out to you guys, and I'm pretty sure every single person that's here feels the same way. I am very open to all the changes that are coming. I think the biggest thing, and I'm very, very impressed with Dora in a sense on keeping these lines open for us to put our input and put our knowledge from different aspects, not just the funeral industry. So I appreciate that as well. Just know, I know for the families that had to go through this, and this is what came out of it. Just know this is not. It's not. I know they're trying to make it fast, and we're moving things way quicker than normal. I really do hope as well that as things progress and regress, that we actually come back and have the opportunity to clean up or clear up some statements or some codes or whatnot that are being in place by the legislature. I guess this is not a question. This is just kind of my input. I'm very impressed even with the other funeral homes. They're putting their inputs. They're being very professional about it, and nobody's arguing or fighting over it. So, just I thank you guys, and we're all. I'm hoping that we all kind of get something out of this.
Great, thank you so much for your comment. Really appreciate you taking the time. And just to sort of that theme of being able to come back and look at these again, that's really the beautiful part about rulemaking, quite frankly, is that it's never set in stone, right? You have to go through the process, but you can always come back and take a second look at things as circumstance changes or as the law changes. So certainly always open to changes being incorporated as appropriate. I see a hand raised from Tobias Urig. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing anybody's name, but you should be able to unmute. Please go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Oh, that's no problem at all. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I had just a couple of notes for the director, things to consider implementing or maybe broadening in terms of old regulations. I'm not completely up to date on what has been written in, but I would like to bring up the possibility, just kind of coattailing off of the comment about consumer protection. The funeral rule, as it is written in on a federal level, sees, in my experience, very little enforcement on a state level, on a local level, especially rural-wise. Compliance is not really a thing, at least not as it should be. Would it be something that could be considered or should be considered to implement on a state level for easier enforcement? Additionally, would it be wise to emphasize in a more clear manner what right or control one or multiple next of kin have in regards to custody of their loved one? And I mean, in a sense, in one or so sentences previously, it was just stated that they should not be prevented from affecting the transfer of their loved one from one funeral home to another. but especially since burial on property is something that the state has courted and is looking to do now, and any number of other somewhat potentially sticky situations, I feel like defining that type of where the family's control comes in this situation versus where professional intervention or guidance is necessary is something that should really be focused on.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate those comments. I think we may have had a couple of written ones come in. Let's see. We had Aaron Kucharik. There should be a maximum number of establishments a licensed individual can oversee. An anonymous attendee asked, what happens if there's nobody to sign off on the provisional folk because there isn't anyone? An anonymous attendee also said there are more folks in the state who did not attend mortuary school. There's speculations there will be a shortage of workers and an increase of funeral expenses to the public. How will the professionals be paid for their time in overseeing provisional folks, or does high education mean nothing? Anonymous attendee said funeral costs will be higher now for the consumer. Okay. I believe those were the newest written comments to come in. Don't see any additional hands raised at the moment. But we certainly have plenty of time left remaining in our scheduled time today. So please don't feel any rush to raise your hand or type in a comment. Certainly have plenty of time. Let me check the written comments again. Read all of those for the moment. I don't see any additional hand. Oh, here we go. Sheila Canfield Jones. You should be able to unmute on your end. Please go ahead when you're ready. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, it's Sheila Canfield Jones. So
My apologies.
it's okay. It's spelled odd. Yeah, one of my concerns, was about on the peer reviewers. They should be living in Colorado. I mean, the way the draft rules are written, there's nothing in there about where they could come from. And they also should be qualified as full licensees and be responsible for the person that they're reviewing. I believe this would help the consumer to see who's supervising who, and then it would also help DORA, to have regulatory oversight powers over the Colorado peer reviewers. So I just wanted to get that in there. Also, I had a question for Sam. I know in the final part of this that the legislative legal department will look over the rules to make sure that they match the statutes legally. Is that true? I just wanted to make sure that was true. I've already sent in written things for you, suggestions. I think that, when people say there aren't enough qualified people to meet these demands for licensing as far as education, that there are people that are licensed who aren't working in the industry because they don't trust the industry the way it is now. And I think we can bring those people in, and that would be good. And they have until 2027 to get an education, and there are scholarships available at ACC. That's all.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheila. Just to answer the quick question about you mentioned the OLS requirement, and sorry, Nate, I might have stepped on you with that answer, but so there are a couple of requirements relative to rulemaking process. It's a very legally defined process within the Administrative Procedures Act. The Office of the Attorney General is required to review the rules, And then once the rules are adopted, the Office of Legislative Legal Services will also review the rules to make sure both reviews are designed to ensure that the rules that are passed are in compliance with what the statutory provisions are. Nate, feel free to add to that from the.
Yeah. No, that was pretty much what I was going to say. There's also a further step that the legislative committee on, I believe it's legal services, also will take next legislative session after these go into effect. That committee also takes a look at them to make sure that whatever we decided to do is within the bounds of the law. So there are certainly lots of backstops from the AG to the legislative legal services office along the way, certainly. And Ms. Canfield Jones, I see your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry.
I'll lower it. There we go. Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry.
No worries at all. Let's see. I see a hand up from Matthew Soper. You should be able to unmute. Please go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. I just kind of wanted to weigh in as one of the bill sponsors. I certainly want to reassure everyone on this call that if something exceeds authority, I also sit on legal services, so that's something that we'll review. But I just want to thank everyone for giving thoughtful and detailed comment here, because this is really the meat and bones of the policy and being able to move things forward and to get it implemented. So I just really wanted to say thank you.
Well, Representative Soper, I thought I recognized your name, and I apologize for not using your honorific there. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I don't see any hands raised. Let me check the written comments. We got one anonymous attendee. The state of Colorado gave these funeral homes the right to work, yet ignored complaints from the professionals and have not accepted any fault in this. How will DORA ensure this process actually works? They have not been able to answer many questions for a complicated business. Okay. And again, thank you all so much for your comments, whether spoken or written. We really do take all of these to heart, and it helps us create the best possible product, having public input like this. So often the public are the subject matter experts in these matters that we look to for guidance. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Anonymous attendee stated the victims of the Penrose scandal were awarded large monetary judgments. If there are mandatory liability insurance requirements, to whom do we speak to be justly compensated? We were told the defendants were broke. All monetary awards were basically uncollectible. Okay. I don't believe we have any other new written comments. I do see a hand up from Zayad. You should be able to unmute. Please go ahead. You'll have another 3 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, I won't take long. I just wanted to kind of, and I know every single person that's on here feels the same way, at least from the funeral side of things. Just like any other profession, again, I'm not minimizing what has occurred. I wanted to assure at least the people who are from the public that 99.99% of the people that work in this field do it for the right reasons. I know, again, it's hard right now. I totally understand. It's hard to believe. When I was in law enforcement, 99% of the cops are amazingly great at what they do, but you have that 1% that does something, and that's all you see in the news. And I am pretty sure everybody could agree with that. We agree with what happened is wrong. Again, this is, I'm all for what we're doing, but I want to assure like the public, it is, and they're right that we're doing this for the public. we're doing this for the right reason, and that's, I hope they take that. This doesn't happen to every single funeral home. This happened, this happens once. Unfortunately, this happened a lot lately. But school, everybody says, "Oh, schooling is the problem." No, it's ethics, and it's the foundation. I've gotten through. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I have a paramedics license. I'm a post certified. I was a coroner investigator. It's integrity, and that's hard to teach. And unfortunately, we have these people that come in, and whether they have a license or not, and that end up ruin this beautiful industry because of their greed. And I just want to say that to the people again. I'm sorry for you guys' losses. I'm definitely sorry for what happened to you and your family.
Thank you so much again for your comments. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Brett Moore typed in as a third-party transport service. I have a question on section 3B. Is it our responsibility to provide duration and purpose? Decedent is placed in a cooler. Let's see. I see a hand raised. Let's go back to the speaking comments. Danielle McCarthy, you should be able to unmute. Please go ahead. We'll have another 3 minutes.
Awesome, thank you. I'd like to circle back to this licensing requirement that's going to create a potential shortage of professionals. The industry I'm in is the financial industry, and we're seeing a shortage. We know that we also see a shortage in the medical care in medical industry. We're seeing a lot of shortages in a lot of industries. So I'm going to push back on that comment a little bit, just simply because everybody's facing it. But from an economics standpoint, here's the potential for this industry to groom, seek, recruit, care for, blossom, educate new people into your industry. Here's an opportunity, because that's what we're doing in the financial industry, at least with the company I'm with. So I'm pushing back on that, because that to me feels more like a straw man argument. And it falls flat, because the nature of what we do in the United States and our economy is that it is meant to ebb and flow. And obviously other states have made this work, this type of licensure and professional integrity. And those of us, because again, just like the gentleman before me was speaking, not all of us in the different industries, I agree. It's what we consider soft skills, right? It's the integrity, the moral aptitude, the emotional quotient, the emotional quotient as well, that emotional ability. So I do appreciate that, and I do understand that. So I appreciate all the professionals that are here today and taking time to actually listen and be a part of this, because this is what is obviously sorely needed, has been needed. But here's an opportunity within the profession itself. And this is the right time in Colorado to say, hey, here's a great opportunity. This is a great industry. This is a great career. And because you are doing what personally I consider to be some sacred work, is you are coming into people's homes, you're coming into their lives at the most vulnerable and offering a service that, right now, and again, understanding this as a widow, no one likes talking about death. And so to be present, but I think there's a huge opportunity here within the state, and with this opportunity, and for the professionals that are currently in here, to do a lot to bring many people back to this industry, because it is, like I said in my comment that I submitted, the leading cause of death is birth. So in one way or another, we are all going to be confronted with death and with the need of funeral care services, and death care services. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's see. I have Ms. Canfield Jones. I see your hands raised. I'm going to go to Blanca Everhart first. You should be able to.
Hi there.
Please go ahead.
Yep.
You'll have 3 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me lower my hand. I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Danielle said, and I want to ensure those that are listening as consumers and the other stakeholders that we are a state that has our own mortuary program. All other 50 states don't offer a mortuary science program, and they're still licensed. So we have an opportunity, as Danielle said, to enhance our program and groom our residents and those talented people here now. What's happening is the students that are in the mortuary program here in our state are having a hard time finding an opportunity because those that haven't done the investment into the program and into the industry are taking those spots. So that's the challenge that I see as a licensed professional here and a resident of Colorado, a private citizen, that those opportunities are being taken by those that aren't licensed, haven't went to school, maybe just learned off of somebody or was at the right time and place for an opportunity. So there are a lot of students on standby ready to take the challenge on to be an apprentice. Owners, if you're listening, there's many students that are looking for apprenticeships here in Colorado to fulfill their education. So just know that that's something that's constantly being worked on, and that there's many people who have the commitment, are in it for the lifestyle and the ministry, not just for the title and the accolades. So going back to that is, we are not going to experience a shortage. Colorado has a lot of wonderful people that are ready to practice, but they're just waiting for some accountability and for DORA and some licensing to come through so that they can return to the industry. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well. Place you back on mute. And I do see a couple of hands from folks who have already spoken today. So I will go to some written comments first, then I will circle back. An anonymous attendee said, I agree with what was just stated because every other state requires licensed individuals and other states have problems. And there are many other funeral homes that have been shut down due to bad practices. Another anonymous attendee said, this industry does not pay what folks think, and it's not a financial business. It can be very hard for folks to work in and stay in long term. This job does not mean you sit at a desk. You see the worst parts of life. There will be a shortage. Another anonymous attendee says, Danielle is right, and there is a problem in the industry of being many employers, not all, unwilling to pay livable wages, train or pay for school, continuing ed, etc., or even for licensing fees. Sheila Canfield-Jones, thank you, Danielle. This is a big opportunity for professionals in this industry. And another anonymous attendee, this job is high burnout, high stress. Morticians end up with physical ailments from removals. We are exposed to chemicals. We see things you do not see every day in a financial profession. All right, I believe those are the written comments we've received so far. So Sheila Cantrell-Jones, you should be able to unmute. Please,
Hi.
please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I want to reiterate on Blanca and Danielle and what they said and how important it is for all the people that are here that have shown that they ethically, are responding to these challenges. Yes, this is new to this Colorado, but there currently are people in the industry who do not meet qualifications or won't meet them by 2027, who have shown and had conflicts before, and they're still in the industry. And that's kind of concerning in the interim. I know we have no plans for the interim. I know that the inspections are going to be limited based upon the current laws, which is unfortunate. So that leaves us this huge gap until 2027 with people, so having the complaint process as clean as possible and able for people to give complaints is extremely important. I want to say and comment that the Colorado Bureau of Funeral Directors has changed their website, which is awesome. And they have a consumer tab and they refer people to DORA to make complaints. DORA has put out a video that explains the complaint process. And I think that's really important for people to understand that, especially people in the industry who wish to make complaints about people that they work with and things they see that are currently under law not acceptable. So I want to say, you know, this is an opportunity for good people to come into this industry, but there's a lot of people who don't want to be in it because of the way it is and the interim. So it may take a while for us to see this, you know, come through, but it will come through. Other states have rural areas. Other states, you know, that meet the requirements of those states. So this can be cumbersome in the beginning, but I think it'll be a better process in the end, and it'll put more confidence into the industry, both from the consumer end and from the industrial area. You know, people will see that they're being protected, and this is good. This is good. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. I see Tobias Urig, your hand is raised again as well. You can please go ahead when you're ready, and you'll have another 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. I wanted to also kind of follow up on some previous comments that were made, sitting on kind of, I would say, the opposite side of the table as a traditionally trained funeral director who has military background on the funeral side of things. I can say that I was only able to get to where I am today because of the regulations as they were. That might not be considered a point of pride for some, but it definitely is for me. I hold myself to a very high standard and a very high point of esteem. And I have, as many of us in the industry have been, abhorred by the conduct of individuals within our state, but also individuals outside of our state. And I think that it's important for us to keep in mind that education does not a good funeral director make. It is on a case-by-case basis. Not everyone is built for it. Even sometimes people that think they are not ready to do this job. And another point is that most, if not all, funeral-related crimes in the US historically have been perpetrated by licensed individuals, especially since most of the states in the US require some kind of licensure. A board exam does not prevent misconduct. And something that I don't want to see is opportunity taken away from those who are eligible and willing to learn. And I understand that there's some kind of grievance to an extent for those people that decided to go the collegiate route and pursue an education in this industry and then doing all of that work and not being able to find a job, because there are people that are holding those spots, and I respect that. But there shouldn't be only one route to approach an industry, especially if it's an industry that you could end up wasting years of your life on in terms of gaining an education and then finding out it's not something that you're able to handle long term. Specifically, I would like to see, when I get to the point that I have kids, I would like them to go to college for sure, but I would also like for them to be able to be involved in my family business in some capacity. And if they choose, if they're like me and they don't have a great aptitude for traditional education, but they have an aptitude for hands-on learning, I would like to be able to foster them into the industry, as many other people and funeral directors in Colorado have in the past and for a very long time. I don't think that that tradition and that culture is something that is inherently harmful or that inherently fosters malpractice or malfeasance. And that's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate your comments. Okay, I don't see any additional hands raised, but one just popped up, but I am going to go to written comments. Let's see, I think we left off here. Suzanne Elliott stated a quick Google search will result in many hits on multiple scandalous and abhorrent events in Colorado and throughout our nation. We have to place this industry under a microscope and really rebuild it. Constant and diligent inspections of every site, mandatory licensing, and other strict regulations must be considered to correct more carnage in the future. Anonymous attendee stated, in Oklahoma, the apprentice must pay for their own school and own fees. It is hard for some of the smaller locations to compete with the individuals needed in Colorado, and every state is having A hard time finding individuals to work for them due to the high stress environment in Oklahoma requires a BA in mortuary science, and they can't find workers. Danielle McCarthy wrote, "Thank you for the feedback. As a veteran's wife and working with those in crisis, I too have been exposed to things you do not see every day. I have been in several high crisis industries and working with those directly impacted. Military crisis, EMT, DV confidential advocate, HT confidential advocate. We all choose our paths and the latent lessons and exposures. I wish you well in your path." Janelle Leonard stated that I agree with Tobias Ureg. Licensure does not make or force one to be of good moral character. If that were the case, no other violations would occur in other states. And an anonymous attendee also stated, "What happens if there is only one person on staff who went to school and they are so buried with work they cannot oversee people and do a good job at teaching and helping them get licensed?" We appreciate all of those comments. And now we will go to Aaron Kucharik. Apologize if I've mispronounced your name, but you should be able to unmute. Please go ahead when you're ready. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, and you pronounced it perfectly. So I just wanted to add, I am a funeral director that came from the state of Kansas, where there has been licensing for over the past 40 years. I have experience working in both family-owned and corporate-owned and operated mortuary service providers. To touch on Tobias's point, there is that peer review role to go enter the profession without having the educational background. I think the peer reviewers, it needs to be looked at, and I submitted this as a written comment as well. But the qualifications for the peer reviewers need to stipulate that they must live in Colorado with full licensure by the state of Colorado. And the peer reviewer should also be held accountable for any complaints that are filed against the person that they are reviewing. There also needs to be some guidelines to avoid any conflicts of interest, such as a spouse peer reviewing their spouse, or a parent peer reviewing their child, as that can be a very big conflict of interest and allow the peer reviewer to sweep things under the rug. The peer reviewer also needs to be listed on the department's website of who they are reviewing to provide that transparency to the general public. The funeral industry has long been a secretive industry, and we need to pull off that black curtain of the industry and be as transparent to regain the trust that has been diminished by the bad actors in this industry. And by doing that, also, the inspections by the department needs to happen routinely. I come from Kansas, where the state has one inspector, and that inspector inspects every licensed establishment twice a year, and then as well on a complaint-based process. So they have over 350 establishment licenses and branch establishment licenses, and each one of those is investigated and inspected twice a year on a random, non-scheduled basis, and on a complaint basis. I don't think that that is too difficult to expect for the state of Colorado.
Great, thank you so much for your comments. I think we had another written comment come in. Anonymous attendee stated, "Why would removal people not have to be licensed when they are the first contact with the deceased? That's because nobody wants to do that job, and they want to be able to not pay that person what it's really worth. Families already complain about what they have to pay for a removal. This will increase that cost. They don't want to have to make removal folks licensed because they want those people to still get paid little and do the grunt work and go out at 2 a.m., even though they deal with the deceased and the families." Another anonymous attendee stated, "The funeral home has to pay folks to be on call all night and go out at any time, rain, snow, or shine, risk their backs and safety, while the family will still feel taken advantage of by the cost." Okay. We don't see any additional hands raised at the moment. We do have about 20 minutes left in our scheduled times. Certainly no rush at this point, but we are getting down to the end of today's meeting. But again, all of these comments will certainly be taken into consideration, and this definitely won't be the last time that we reach out to get the input from you all. Another couple of written comments just came in. Anonymous attendee said, let's look at the hard part of all this. 2 out of the 4 latest incidents have been done by individuals that have been licensed and had the education required in this state and other states, and they're the ones committing the problems. Also, Suzanne Elliott, in the Penrose case, law enforcement visited the site approximately 17 times in response to complaints. How did DORA or some other industry regulatory agencies not get involved? I see a hand up from Danielle McCarthy. You should, oh,
Perfect. Thank you again.
yeah, please go ahead.
Addressing the comment, yes, here's what my late husband used to say. Laws only keep honest people honest, right? Bad actors are everywhere. And granted, there have been, Colorado has had its fair share within this industry, and it's very unfortunate. What I'm hoping, and the reason I testified, was so that the laws and regulations are better founded. There's a framework in which business can be conducted, and business owners, funeral directors, all the parties have a framework and a matrix, if you will, from which to hopefully guide and support their business structures. Obviously, criminals are going to act outside of that without laws, and even with the laws. And so the hope is also that there is then on the other side of the law, that if you act outside of the expectations, the norms, and the framework of the law, that then there are consequences. And that has been the reason I have testified, and I still continue to show up completely clueless into things like this, in the hopes that, yes, I get it, bad actors are everywhere. You can't regulate everybody out. Wall Street has shown us that several times over. So again, this isn't me trying to say we need to regulate everybody out of the industry. What I'm hoping this is doing, and I think this was brought up, which is this just makes those doing the right job the right way for the right reasons look even better. And it gives us more reason as consumers to seek you out. And with the hope that with this framework and foundation, those bad actors might be dissuaded, and maybe they're not, but if they're not, then at least there's some sort of framework to hold them accountable and again, keep that trust and that fidelity in the industry, because again, leading cause of death is birth. So again, the death care industry, we're going to have to turn to you to care for us. And that means everybody on the, everybody, because we're all human, we all die. So I appreciate everybody's time on this today. I'd like to see my state become a wonderful place for death care industry, because right now being the laughing stock cannot be good for business owners. It's not good for the state, and it's definitely not good for consumers. So again, thank you all for your time today.
And thank you. I appreciate you coming out and having your voice heard, even if you don't know exactly what's going on. It's always good to have as many voices in this process as possible. I see Aaron Kuchar, your hand is raised again. Please go ahead when you're ready. You'll have another 3 minutes.
Yeah, under the section of the refrigeration standards for the human remains, when there's a typo in the draft rules that says 440, as the draft rules state, temperature should be at 44 degrees. However, I do appreciate you guys for making me dust off my mortuary science books after 13 years to look up, and the recommended temperature should be between 36 to 39 degrees for refrigeration units. Also, under disqualifying convictions, I feel that it is pretty scary that we left out the crime of abuse of a corpse. That should be a pretty blatant, obvious thing with Colorado's long history of issues in the funeral industry. That abuse of a corpse should be a disqualifying conviction, pretty readily available. I also, on the proof of insurance, I feel like this is just important to touch on. As employees of a funeral home, do not oftentimes be a part of the process of making sure that the business is insured. I feel that it's important that that insurance be listed on the establishment's registration on the department's website for clarity and transparency, not only to the consumer, but to their employees. And I also feel that it is important for funeral home establishments and mortuary service providers to maintain certificates of insurance for all third-party vendors, including any crematories that they use and transport services. As if they are contracting those out, they are as well liable for the services that a third-party contract person provides. However, they need to have that person, that third party, is insured for the safety of all consumers in the state of Colorado. The only other thing that I think I really want to mention here is about the preparation rooms. Yes, not all facilities have those. However, if they use an offsite preparation room, they should be registered as well and held to that same. But there should also be a inspection of those facilities that once they cancel or lapse their registration, it should be inspected upon immediately, which I believe was in the original bills. So I also think that it's important that no food or drink be allowed into the preparation rooms or any facilities where bodies are withheld, and that those rooms be provided with signage that explains the biohazard exposure risks. Those are as well both OSHA requirements as well, but it should be in the draft rules. And so thank you.
Thank you so much, and excellent timing. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. We are again getting down to the end of our scheduled time today. I have about 10 minutes or so left. It does look like we maybe have another couple of written comments. Anonymous attendee wrote, "Can an unlicensed person do prep work on a decedent, whether they are embalmed or not?" Another anonymous attendee stated, "There are many things that can and should be done that don't require arterial embalming. Excuse me. The choice isn't embalming or nothing. There's a huge middle ground." And Suzanne Mackey said, "One of my main concerns is regular inspections and follow up with complaints. How will this aspect of the regulations be structured, and especially how will it be funded to provide adequate oversight?" Really appreciate everyone's comments today. This has been a very robust discussion. I really appreciate you all coming out, taking the time.
I mean, as we start to wind down, just a couple of things. If you go to the division's website for funeral and mortuary science services, there are a couple of videos that you could watch, which have been mentioned earlier. And there's also a consumer and industry guide there that talks quite a bit about the requirements of the legislation, what the individual professions are able to do in terms of scope, the definitions around each of those different professions, and what the requirements are for licensure for each of them as well, along with the requirements for the peer review process and some information about who would be eligible for immediate licensure and who would need to go through the peer review process. In addition to that, that consumer guide also talks about the timeline for this overall process and when we expect to have applications and things available for folks to begin that process. So there's a lot of great information out there. If you need help accessing any of it, just reach out to us at the emails that Nate has provided in terms of rulemaking feedback. We're happy to help anybody access that information, but it's all out available on the website, and we encourage you to take a look at it.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much, Sam. It's true. Our website has a lot of really good information. Right. I believe we have answered every. Oh, we got another anonymous attendee stated, I apologize if this was answered previously, but do we still have opportunities to submit further questions and clarifications? If so, to whom exactly do we communicate with? So yes, that there's definitely going to be a continued opportunity for you to send us written comments. And I will go over that as soon as we close out this portion of today's meeting, and I'll close it out and have that contact information for you. But we do have about 7 minutes remaining in our scheduled time today. I wanted to pause and see if there's anybody who had any final comments or questions, particularly those who haven't had a chance to speak yet. We do have quite a few folks on, so I just wanted to see if there was anybody who had any last second comments or questions for us before we wrap this up. There are a couple of comments here written. Anonymous attendee, please consider allowing for provisional licenses for those traditionally trained in the future, as I feel this introduction to the funeral industry is one of ways in which our state promotes growth and stands above the rest. Okay. I don't see any hands raised.
I pushed the wrong button in terms of the answer to that question. Part of that is required in the statute. The question about considering to allow the provisional licensure process for future people coming into the industry. The provisional licensure process and the peer review process was specifically designed in statute to be for people that are currently practicing in Colorado and have some level of industry experience. So once those timelines go away, that process won't be available to future licensees. That's one of the statutory provisions.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for that clarification.
But we understand the comment. Certainly.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we are down to our final 5 minutes, so I will keep the line open for comments and questions here for I'll give it another minute or so. But we will be wrapping up here at about 2:30. And while we're waiting to see if there's anybody else who would like to speak, I did just want to reiterate our appreciation for you all coming out. This has been perhaps one of the most robust discussions in this kind of forum that I've ever been involved in. So it's really, really nice to have so many members of the public be so heavily invested in this and to actually come out and be involved. It makes our jobs infinitely easier to perform. So again, just really, really appreciate you all taking the time. I will let it go until about, let's say 2:27, and then we'll wrap this up. I see folks are starting to drop off the call anyway, so go ahead and just one last anonymous comment. People who come from other states should have to undergo more in-depth training, being some of them come in with bad intentions. All right, so with that, I will go ahead and move us to the end. All right, thank you so much for participating in today's meeting. As part of this collaborative process, all comments and program recommendations will be provided to the director for review. Any proposed revisions will be made available to stakeholders for additional comments prior to the rulemaking hearing, which is currently scheduled for November 7th, 2024. All rulemaking information can be found on the program's website, the Public Notices tab, and written comments may be sent to Dora_DPO_rulemaking@state.co.us. Again, that's Dora, DORA_DPO_rulemaking@state.co.us. That concludes the stakeholder meeting. Thank you again for your participation.